The sun sat lazily above the horizon when Father Chinidu's small blue car rattled along the laterite road that led to Ogochi. The tires groaned, catching and releasing the red dust that clung to the sky like smoke. For hours, he had been driving through small hamlets, waving at children who shouted "Father" as he passed. He had a new posting, St. Mary's Parish, Ogochi. And although older priests had muttered warnings under their breath, Chinidu had accepted the assignment with calm faith. Welcome to real-life African stories. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss any of our tales. He was 33, young in the priesthood but strong in conviction. Before leaving the diocesan headquarters, the bishop had prayed over him with a quiet voice. Go with peace, Father Chinidu. Do not let what you hear disturb your heart. Ogochi has seen darkness, but light must still find it. The bishop's eyes lingered a moment too long, and Chinidu thought he saw worry behind the blessing. By the time he reached the painted stone marking the village boundary, the air itself felt different, heavier, wetter, and strangely still. The inscription on the rock, barely visible under moss, read "Welcome to Ogochi, land of eternal harvest." He smiled faintly at the motto and pressed the accelerator. But the moment his tires crossed the line, a thick cloud gathered, swallowing the sky in one breath. The light dimmed as if someone had doused a lamp. In seconds, fat drops of rain crashed against the windshield, violent and fast. He tried to switch on his headlights, but the switches failed. The dashboard lights flickered and died. The wipers stopped halfway through a stroke. "This cannot be," he murmured, gripping the wheel. He slowed down, eyes squinting through the curtain of water. The road blurred. The trees bent as though whispering warnings to one another. Chinidu checked his wristwatch. 3:30. The day was supposed to be blazing hot, yet the world had turned to night. When the rain became too heavy, he pulled the car to the roadside, intending to wait it out. He turned the key to stop the engine, but the car refused to stay still. It moved gently forward as though pushed by invisible hands. He blinked and turned the key again. The car kept gliding. "In the name of Jesus Christ," he whispered, heart thudding. He yanked the door open and jumped out into the rain. The car continued down the road by itself, wheels turning soundlessly until it vanished behind a stand of trees. "What is this place?" he gasped. The rain was no longer ordinary. It lashed his skin like tiny blades. He fell to his knees, pain biting through his soaked cassock. "God of mercy, if you truly sent me here, then keep me safe." The moment the words left his mouth, there was a crash ahead. Flash of light. His car had hit a tree and gone silent. Then, abrupt stillness. The rain stopped. The sky remained black, but the air hung empty. He stood slowly, water dripping from his torn sleeves. The cassock was shredded in strips as though clawed. Shivering, he stumbled to the car, found another robe in the back seat, and changed into it. When he tried the headlights again, they sputtered weakly and died. Yet the road ahead somehow glimmered faintly, a ghostly sheen guiding him forward. He drove slowly, whispering prayers under his breath. Half an hour later, he heard a thud under his tires. The car jolted and stopped. He stepped out, flashlight in hand, but the light refused to work. The batteries were new. He smacked it against his palm. Nothing. The darkness pressed closer, almost alive. Then came the barking, distant at first, then near. Ugh. He couldn't see them, but he could feel their movement, circling. He crouched behind a clump of elephant grass, heart hammering. The barking paused. He waited. When he began to move again, the barking exploded, wild, furious. Something bit into his calf. He shouted and stumbled backward, pain burning. He turned and ran the way he'd come, limping. And suddenly light. The deeper he retreated, the clearer the path became. The barking faded. The air grew calm. He realized, panting, that the darkness itself was bound to the village. It did not want him inside. He stood by the roadside, bleeding, trembling, then began to sing quietly, a hymn from seminary days. His voice cracked but steady. "Guide me, O thou great Redeemer." Each word seemed to push the darkness farther away. When he reached the last line, "Feed me till I want no more," the path to Ogochi glowed faintly as though in surrender. With the hymn still on his lips, he limped forward. The village lay silent ahead. Not a soul moved on the street. Even the rainwater steaming from the ground seemed afraid. He reached a tall gate marked St. Mary's Parish and knocked. A single voice answered, dry and sharp. "Who knocks at this hour?" He recognized the accent, local, old. "I am Father Chinidu, the new priest assigned here." The gate creaked open. A thin woman stood there, her wrapper tied loosely, her eyes glittering in the gloom. "Father," she said without bowing. "So, you came after all?" "Yes." "And you are?" "I am Mama Ifioma, the housekeeper," she replied. "Enter, Father. The rain has done enough to you." She took his bag and led him through the compound. The church loomed at the center, blackened by smoke, roof sagging. Around it, weeds thrived. No bell tower rang, no sign of life. "The villagers don't come here anymore," she said without turning. "They say prayers don't cross the roofs of Ogochi." He frowned. "And you?" "I only keep the house," she murmured. "Nothing more." Inside the air was cold. The lights flickered weakly, powered by an old generator that coughed once and died. Chinidu dropped his bag on a wooden chair. "Why is it so dark here? The day hasn't ended." Mama Ifioma gave a dry laugh. "Day? You won't see day again until Ogochi accepts you. That is, if it ever does." Her tone changed abruptly. "Let me make you tea." She shuffled away, leaving a faint smell of camphor behind. Chinidu tried to pray, but exhaustion won. He knelt, mumbled a psalm, and before rising, heard a soft tapping on the window. He turned. 3 shadows stood outside. Small, bent figures, their faces hidden. They seemed to be chanting in low tones. A chill climbed his spine. The next thing he knew, the room tilted and darkness swallowed him whole. When he woke, a different face hovered over him. A young woman, radiant and out of place, her smile bright enough to hurt. "Father, you fainted," she said. "I'm Amaka, the parish cleaner." Her dress shimmered under the dim lamp, far too short for decency. Chinidu turned his face away. "Where is Mama Ifioma?" he asked. "Who?" The woman blinked. "There's no one here by that name. It's only me and Brother Matthew, the cook. But I met her at the gate. She brought me in." Amaka tilted her head, puzzled, then smiled again, twisting her waist. "Maybe you were dreaming. This place does that sometimes." She brushed her hand against his arm, but he stepped back. "Please, I need a moment alone," he said quietly. When she left, he took out his small bottle of holy water and began sprinkling it around the room. Each droplet hissed faintly as it hit the floor. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and went silent. Later that evening, a knock came at the door. A man entered, cheerful and broad-shouldered. "Father, welcome. I thought you wouldn't make it." He smiled widely. "I'm Brother Matthew, the parish cook." Chinidu studied him for a second, still wary. "Why would you think I wouldn't make it?" Matthew's grin faltered. Because no priest lasts here. The last one we buried was 2 years ago. Before him, 3 others. But don't worry, Father. Maybe you'll break the chain. His eyes glinted strangely as he said it. Chinedu's heart tightened, but he smiled faintly and gestured to a chair. Let's pray before anything else. Matthew hesitated, then nodded. They knelt together. As Chinedu prayed aloud, he opened his eyes for a brief second, and saw, reflected in the windowpane, a third arm resting on Matthew's shoulder that shouldn't have been there. The candlelight flickered. The prayer continued. Outside, the night pressed close like a living thing. And so began Father Chinedu's first night in Ogochi, the village that devoured every priest. The next morning, Father Chinedu awoke to the low rumble of drums far in the distance. The sound was faint, like something playing inside a dream, yet it filled the air with a kind of nervous heartbeat. His head throbbed, his leg ached from the bite, and the scent of palm oil and smoke drifted in through the open window. He rose slowly, splashed water on his face, and stepped outside. The compound looked clearer by daylight, though a strange mist lingered just above the ground. The church building stood crooked but dignified, its weather-beaten walls bearing scars of fire and age. Beyond it, a small cemetery sat behind a broken iron fence. From where he stood, Chinedu could see rows of wooden crosses, many tilted and some half-buried. He frowned. Each cross bore no name, only a single word burned into the wood. Returned. As he approached the church, Amaka appeared, sweeping the yard with a palm broom. Her head was wrapped in a bright cloth, her smile wide. "Good morning, Father," she sang. "Good morning," he replied, studying her carefully. "You came early." "I live just beyond the palm grove," she said. "It's safer to be near the church when the sun is up." "Safer." She looked up briefly, eyes cautious. "At night, some people walk where they shouldn't. You'll understand soon." He wanted to press further, but she changed the topic. "Would you like breakfast? Brother Matthew is roasting plantain." "No, thank you," he said. "I want to look around first." She nodded, her eyes following him as he entered the church. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of old incense. Rows of pews stood unevenly. Cobwebs hung like thin veils from the rafters. The altar cloth was stained, the crucifix tilted. He knelt to pray but found his voice weak. Each word felt swallowed by the walls. Then he noticed something carved faintly into the base of the altar, a pattern of triangles and spirals, nothing like Christian symbols. He ran a finger over them, frowning. The door creaked open behind him. Brother Matthew entered, carrying a bowl of water. "Father," he said cheerfully, "you'll need this to wash before Massachusetts." Chinedu stood. "Matthew, who carved these?" Matthew's grin faltered. "Those marks. The old priests used to complain about them too. The villagers said they've been here since the church was built." "Who built this church?" "The first missionary, Father Donald. He came from Ireland many years ago. They say he tried to bless the ground before construction began, but the soil refused his holy water. He poured and poured until he collapsed. The villagers helped finish it anyway. He lasted 1 year." Chinedu's stomach tightened. "And after him?" Matthew looked away. "Another priest. Then another. Each one left differently. Differently. One drowned. One vanished. One went mad." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They say Ogochi keeps a balance. For every priest that comes, something must be taken in return." The drums outside grew louder, closer. Chinedu crossed himself. "Taken by who?" Before Matthew could answer, a mawkish voice called from the courtyard, "Father, there's a man here to see you." When he stepped outside, he found an elderly man leaning on a carved staff. His skin was dark and lined, his eyes bright as burning coal. "Good morning, Father," the man said. "I am Chief Omenka, head of Ogochi." Chinedu bowed slightly. "Welcome, Chief. It is good to finally meet you." The chief smiled thinly. "You are brave. Others who came before you never made it to my doorstep." Chinedu gestured to a stool. "Please sit." Omenka sat but kept his staff upright, resting it against his chest. "We are happy to have a man of God again, but you must understand, Ogochi is different. Our people keep the old ways. The gods here are restless. I came to serve God, Chief, not to quarrel with anyone's traditions." "That is good," Omenka said. "But remember, every priest who has come tried to change us. They failed. The village does not like to be changed." Chinedu folded his hands calmly. "I do not come to change men. I come to bring truth." The chief chuckled softly. "Truth. You will find many kinds of truth here." He stood to leave. "When night falls, Father, lock your doors and do not answer any knock. No matter who calls your name." He walked away, leaving the faint smell of camphor and ashes behind. That night, as Chinedu prepared for bed, he found a folded note slipped under his door. The handwriting was shaky, the paper damp. It read, "Father, do not trust the woman who serves you. She is not what she seems. And never step into the cemetery after dusk. The returned ones walk then." He looked toward the window where a mawkish shadow moved against the lamplight outside. She was humming a hymn softly, almost too softly. He closed the note, tucked it into his Bible, and knelt by his bed. "Lord, if this is your test, give me strength." From far away, a rooster crowed, though it was deep in the night. Then came a whisper, faint but clear, right beside his ear. "Welcome home, Father Chinedu. The village remembers." The candle flickered out. Silence returned. And somewhere beyond the church wall, the drums began again. Slow, measured, like a heartbeat counting down to something unseen. The next few days in Ogochi passed in uneasy quiet. The villagers kept their distance, though a few came to observe the new priest from afar, whispering among themselves as though measuring his days. Father Chinedu walked through the dusty paths after morning prayers, hoping to meet the people and understand their hearts. But each greeting was met with cautious silence and eyes that turned quickly away. The market sat at the edge of the forest, buzzing with low voices. When Chinedu arrived there one morning, every conversation seemed to pause mid-sentence. Women selling yams suddenly rearranged their goods. A palm wine tapper who had been laughing a moment earlier began muttering a prayer. Chinedu smiled politely, asking after their welfare, but no one answered until an old woman sitting beside a basket of snails spoke up. "Father, eat from the land, but not from the soil," she said cryptically. Her eyes, clouded with age, stared past him. "This ground remembers blood." He frowned gently. "Mama, what do you mean?" She smiled without humor. "You will see. They always see before they go." Before he could ask again, a sudden cold wind swept through the market, toppling baskets and scattering leaves. The people dispersed swiftly, leaving him standing alone under the rustling palm fronds. He felt it then, a faint hum under his feet, as if the earth itself was breathing. That night, while he prayed in the chapel, he heard a distant bell, soft, rhythmic, and not from the church. He followed the sound through the compound until he reached the broken fence behind the churchyard. Beyond it lay the forbidden cemetery. The moonlight fell unevenly, illuminating rows of crosses marked returned. The gate was chained but loosely. As he pushed it open, it groaned like a living thing. A thick mist clung to the ground, swirling around his legs. The air smelled of iron and rain. He crossed himself, clutching his rosary. Lord, guide me. He hadn't gone 10 steps when he heard it. Footsteps behind him, light and slow. He turned. Nothing but the mist. He continued walking, reading the inscriptions on the crosses. Some bore carvings of strange symbols similar to those on the altar. The ground under him seemed soft, almost spongy. Then he saw her. A woman in white stood at the far end of the cemetery, her back to him. Her hair fell long and dark, almost touching the ground. She moved with the gentleness of wind. For a moment, he thought it was a Maka, but the air around her shimmered, faintly blue. His pulse quickened. "Who's there?" he called. The woman turned slowly. Her face was pale and beautiful, but her eyes were hollow, glowing faintly. Her lips parted, and a soft melodic voice floated toward him. "Father Chinidu." His name left her mouth as though she had known it forever. "You should not be here," she whispered. "The dead are not at rest." He stepped forward carefully. "Who are you?" "I was the last to confess before the first priest vanished," she said. He promised to bless the graves, but the ground refused. When he poured holy water, fire came instead. Chinidu's hand trembled. "What do you want from me?" Her voice dropped lower, the mist swirling tighter. "Leave before the covenant wakes. They call it blessing, but here it is feeding. Every prayer you say feeds what sleeps beneath." A gust of wind howled suddenly, and the mist rose higher, choking his breath. He stumbled backward. When he looked again, she was gone. Only the crosses remained, and beneath one, the soil had shifted as though something had moved from underneath. He ran back toward the church, breath ragged. Behind him, the bell tolled again, 3 times, deep and slow. The sound echoed through the night long after he shut his door. In the dim light of his room, he found another note on the table, written in the same shaky hand as before. "She walks because they never buried her right. She was the first offering. The woman in white is not your enemy, but she cannot save you." Amaka knocked just then. "Father, are you awake?" she asked through the door. Her voice was soft but sharp underneath, like a knife wrapped in velvet. He hesitated. "Yes." "What is it?" "I heard the bell," she said. "No one is allowed there after dark. The chief will be angry if he knows." "How did you know I was there?" he asked quietly. There was a pause. Then, almost too faintly to hear, "Because the dead always whisper when they see the living enter their yard." When he opened the door, she was gone. Chinidu locked it quickly and turned toward the window. The cemetery was hidden behind fog again, but one grave glowed faintly blue, the same color as the woman's eyes. That night he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face and heard her warning. And beneath the stillness, beneath the restless wind, he could almost hear something shifting, something vast, beneath the soil of Ogochi. The dawn after Father Chinidu's encounter at the cemetery came slowly, heavy with mist and the scent of burnt palm leaves. The church bell did not ring that morning. Its silence stretched across Ogochi like a veil, unsettling even the wind. Father Chinidu knelt in prayer before the altar, but the peace that usually followed prayer refused him. The words of the woman in white echoed in his mind. "Every prayer you say feeds what sleeps beneath." He tried to shake it off as temptation, a trick to weaken his faith, but something deep within told him it wasn't. As he prayed, he noticed once again the strange carvings on the altar's edge. They were faint, half buried beneath the polish, ancient symbols that seemed to twist and move when the sunlight touched them. One looked like a coiled serpent swallowing its tail, another an eye enclosed in a spiral. His fingers brushed one accidentally, and a pulse of warmth traveled up his arm. He withdrew his hand instantly. "Father!" a voice called. It was Amaka standing at the doorway, her face calm but her eyes wary. "The chief sent for you," she said. "He wants to see you at once." He said, "It's about last night." Chinedu hesitated but nodded. He followed her through the path leading to the chief's compound, passing the village square where a group of elders whispered in circles. The air was thick with fear disguised as gossip. Chickens scurried underfoot, and the sky, though it was morning, seemed dimmer than it should be. Chief Nadazi was waiting under the large Udala tree at the compound center. His wrinkled hands gripped a wooden staff carved with runes older than the church itself. Beside him stood 3 men in dark wrappers, the same faces Chinedu had seen lingering near the chapel fence the night before. "Father," the chief said, voice trembling slightly, "you went to the forbidden ground." Chinedu bowed. "Yes, I did. I heard the bell and followed it. I did not know it was forbidden." The chief's gaze hardened. "You know now. That place is sealed by blood. No priest has entered there and come out the same. You should not have gone." "I found graves marked returned," Chinedu said, his tone calm but probing. "And I saw a woman." The chief's eyes flickered briefly. The elders exchanged glances. One of them crossed himself unconsciously. "She was never buried," the chief said finally. "That is why she walks. But you must not speak of her again. There are things you cannot understand." "Then teach me," Chinedu said. "If I am to serve here, I must know what holds your people in fear." The chief looked into his eyes for a long time before speaking again. "This land was not always Ogochi. Long ago it was called Ndiobi, the dwelling of the covenant. The first priests who came here did not build this church. They only built over what was already there. They thought they could bury the old gods under crosses and call it victory. But you cannot bury hunger, Father. You can only feed it." His words chilled Chinedu to the bone. "Feed it with what?" "With what priests bring most," said one of the elders softly. "Sacrifice. Holy words. Innocence. That is what the covenant feeds on." Before Chinedu could reply, the chief dismissed the others with a wave. "Go back to the church," he said to Chinedu quietly. "Do not touch the altar again. And never pray at midnight." Amaka walked him back, silent until they reached the chapel gate. Then she stopped and whispered, "Father, whatever happens, do not go beneath the church." Chinedu turned to her sharply. "What is beneath it?" Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned and walked away. That evening, a storm gathered without warning. Dark clouds coiled like smoke above the parish house. The wind roared, shaking the windows. As Chinedu closed the chapel doors, he heard a sound, faint but distinct, a rhythmic thumping from below the altar. First he thought it was thunder. Then it came again, low, heavy, like a heartbeat. He lit a lantern and knelt by the altar, pushing aside the woven mat that covered the marble floor. There, hidden beneath layers of dust and old polish, he found a small iron ring embedded in the floor. Edge. He hesitated, whispering a prayer, then pulled it open. The hatch groaned, exhaling a foul breath of damp air and decay. A narrow staircase spiraled downward into darkness. The air was colder there, and the faint sound of chanting floated up, voices distant but human. Holding the lantern before him, Chinedu descended. The deeper he went, the thicker the air grew, until it seemed to press against his chest. The walls were carved with the same symbols as the altar, but these glowed faintly in the lantern light. At the bottom, he reached a stone chamber, circular, wide, and filled with the scent of blood and incense. At the center stood an ancient altar made of black rock, slick with moisture. Around it lay remnants of old relics, torn vestments, burnt crosses, and bones. And carved into the floor, in wide circular lines, was the same inscription he had seen above. Every prayer is a meal, every priest a vessel. Before he could absorb the meaning, something moved in the shadows. A whisper slid through the air like silk on glass. "You shouldn't have come." The voice was soft, a mawkish voice. But when he turned, the woman who stepped into the light was not a Maka. Her eyes glowed with the same faint blue as the woman in the mist. "You opened what should stay sealed," she said, stepping closer. "They will come now, the ones that feed." The ground trembled slightly, and the lantern flickered. Beneath the stone altar, something pulsed like a beating heart. "Who are you?" Chinedu demanded. "I am what remains of the covenant," she said. "And you, Father, are the last offering." The lantern went out. In the sudden darkness, he felt the air shift, thousands of whispers rising all around him, the sound of unseen wings unfolding in the dark. And above, through the crack of thunder, the church bell began to toll again, slow, deliberate, and calling something ancient from beneath the earth. When the lantern went out, Father Chinedu felt the weight of the darkness swallow him whole. The air grew thicker, pulsing with heat and whispers. Every breath he took carried the taste of rust, ash, and something ancient, alive. Beneath his feet, the ground throbbed like the chest of a sleeping giant. He stumbled backward, groping through the blackness until his hand brushed against cold stone. Then faintly a shimmer, a small blue flame, came alive at the far end of the chamber. From within it stepped a Maka, or what looked like a Maka. Her once brown skin now glowed faintly, veins shimmering with light that pulsed to the rhythm of the altar's heartbeat. Her eyes were twin orbs of gold, unblinking. The voice that came from her was layered, part human, part something far older. "Now you see," she said. "You were never sent to save us, Father. You were sent to complete the covenant." Chinedu raised his cross instinctively. "In the name of the Father, the Son." She laughed, a laugh that split the chamber. "They all said that before they burned. You think you are the first." And then, as if summoned by her laughter, faces appeared in the walls, hollow-eyed priests, their mouths open in silent screams, their outlines etched in ash. Each one shimmered briefly, then melted into the stone. Chinedu's heart pounded. "No," he whispered. "God sent me here for deliverance, not death." "Deliverance?" the creature sneered. "This land fed your faith long before you brought your cross. When your God was a whisper, we were already flesh and fire. The first priest tried to bury us, but his blood sealed the pact instead. Everyone that came after only renewed it." Her steps echoed as she approached. "But you are different. Pure. Untouched. That is why the village called for you. You carry enough light to end us, or to feed us for centuries." The stone altar began to glow, symbols pulsing red like open wounds. The air screamed as the ground split open, revealing a pit beneath the altar filled with writhing shadows. From its depths came voices, chanting, pleading, crying all at once. Chinedu dropped to his knees, clutching his Bible. "If this is my test, then I will not fail." He opened to the Psalms, his voice trembling but rising above the chaos. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." As he prayed, the light from his cross began to spread, weakly at first, then brighter. The shadows hissed, retreating, but Amaka screamed, clutching her head. "Stop! You'll tear it apart," she cried, her voice no longer layered, now terrified, human. Chinedu didn't stop. He prayed louder, tears streaming down his face. The ground quaked violently. The glowing veins in Amaka's body burst like threads of light, spilling brilliance across the chamber. Then silence. When Chinedu opened his eyes, he was alone. The altar was split, the pit beneath it sealed with molten rock. The carvings on the walls had turned to ash. Slowly he climbed the stairs, each step echoing with the sound of fading cries. When he reached the church above, dawn was breaking. The heavy darkness that had hung over Ogochi was gone. For the first time since his arrival, sunlight pierced through the chapel windows. He stepped outside and found the villagers gathered, kneeling in silence. Their eyes were clear, the madness gone. Amaka stood among them, weak but alive, clutching a rosary. She met his gaze, and though she could not speak, tears ran down her cheeks. Chief Nadazi stepped forward, his staff trembling in his hands. "It is done," he said softly. "You have broken the covenant." But Chinedu only shook his head. "No, Goddess, I was only a witness." The villagers burst into song, their voices rising like smoke into the golden morning. Chinedu turned back to the church, now cracked and burning with faint embers. He knelt before it one last time and whispered, "Let your light stay, even when I leave." As he rose, the church bell rang once, not in warning this time but in peace. Days later, he packed his things and left Ogochi. The villagers watched him go, some crying, others singing. At the edge of the forest, he stopped and looked back. The village that had once devoured every priest now stood washed in light. Yet deep in the forest, beyond where even the wind dared to travel, a faint echo still lingered, a heartbeat beneath the earth, slow but alive, waiting. And Father Chinedu, walking away under the rising sun, whispered to himself, "Faith wins only when it never stops fighting." Then he disappeared down the road, leaving Ogochi forever changed. Thank you for watching and listening to our story. In the comment section, please let us know where you're watching from and share your thoughts on our story. Also, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more stories. See you in the next video. Bye!